Get it! Believe you can create, see it as innate in the dream room. Yeah, we're bringing dreams alive in the place to shine in the dream room. Yeah.
Welcome back to the Dream Room. Today we have a truly unique artist joining us, Javier Cabanillas of the group Cabanillas Project. A vibrant musician whose roots stretch from the heart of Mexico to the sunny shores of California, bringing with him a blend of cultural influences that inspire his sound and storytelling, with an enchanting ability to fuse traditional melodies with contemporary rhythms. Javier has carved out a distinct space in the music scene. I'm excited for you to hear his journey, the inspirations behind his music, and the reflections he's gathered along the way. Let's dive in.
Hello. Buenos dias.
Buenos
I know,
dias.
we're here. I'm excited. After we met and you're like, hey, this is the podcast, so let's do it.
Yeah. So, can you share a little bit about your upbringing in Mexico and how it influenced your music?
Yeah, I don't think it's all that unique. I think
Okay.
it's very similar to lots of Mexican, people that kind of lived in a bicultural kind of back and forth between the United States and in Mexico. And so I think for me particularly was that I got to enjoy, my hamburgers on one side and my tacos, carne asada on the other side.
Mm.
So the food palette was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for the music palette was also unique for me. Because I was enjoying a lot of the music that my uncles would listen to, my grandparents would listen to, and I felt like it was probably one of the best playlists for me to absorb, because it was all the way from big band music to Glenn Miller to rock and roll through my parents and through classic rock music and stuff that you would kind of think, well, why is this stuff in like not regional music in Mexico? And then, of course, I would listen to that as well with my cousins. So that's kind of like the quick fabric of some of the stuff that I was exposed to, but very in a small circle on a ranch, which we'd be sharing, the space with like a wild pig or some, chickens and a cornfield.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the sunsets are the best.
Oh,
The sunsets in the desert are the best. So that was kind of like my environment. And so I was in that circle of just constantly listening to that kind of style of music and enjoying all the stuff that has the elements to offer.
What brought you to California, and how has that experience influenced your artistic journey?
So I was born here.
Okay.
Actually, I was born in Hayward, California, and my dad at the time had a contract with laying the BART tracks down when they were expanding. So I was born here, but back and forth between. By the time I was a year old, I was going back to Mexico. Then I would come back. So that's why I was saying I had that kind of like bicultural experience, because I was constantly crossing the border back and forth. I did my schooling in both countries. So, I did my elementary, middle school, and Mexico stuff. Also, by the time I was getting into high school and kind of getting into finding my identity, then I was less in a classroom and more out in the real world and in the streets and kind of going back and forth. And so for the longest time, probably from when I was 19 until I was about 30 years old, 30-ish, I was living in Tijuana, Mexico. And then at the time, my sister was living in San Francisco. And she's like, hey, why don't you try, your music stuff over here? And I'm like, I'm fine. I was like, I'm fine in Tijuana. There's no need for anything. But I think for us to try as siblings to get together and figure out what we want to do with our parents, and I figured, all right, well, let me come to the Bay Area and try my music out. And so I've been here since 2011.
Oh, okay. Well, Do you recall the first moment or the first thing that inspired you to want to be a musician? When did you know?
No, I knew that my family, we loved music. It was a motivational thing that was from not only just parties, but like my mom had like this brilliant idea to motivate us on the weekends to clean the house. So she would get like she would rip out pieces of paper and write rooms of the house on it. And then she would hand it to us, and she said, "All right, like the lottery. All right, pick one." And so we'd pull it out, and it'd be like, "Oh, okay, well, I have the." Everybody dreaded the bathroom, right? So I'd somebody get the bathroom, and then the living room. And so what she would do is she would allow, I think it was like 30 minutes or an hour for everybody's playlist we'd all listen to music while we'd clean the house. So I would listen to Michael Jackson because that's what my brother and sister were in. I'd listen to Aretha Franklin. Then I would listen to my music, which I was a big Elvis Presley fan. And so it was just constant motivation for us. But at the time, I had no idea that was like being embedded into why I like music and how I got involved with music. And it wasn't until until I saw the Titanic, I knew.
Really? Tell me about that.
That scene when the Titanic is falling, and there's these musician violinists that are like, they're playing, and then all of a sudden they pack up their stuff and they're starting to put away their things, and then they're like, one of them decides, well, whatever. He ends up reopening up his case and then starts to play the violin sound, right? And I kind of identified with like, you know what? That would probably be me and that's when I knew. I was like, it was like the music was much more important. And I was in moments like that, music was like a savior. And so throughout my life, I've always kind of witnessed that there's been moments in where music has like, saved me through a lot of things. And so I identified. Jokingly, I say the Titanic and blah, blah, blah. But I kind of was a moment where I was like, what? I think that, I identify with that musician and why they were doing those things. And it wasn't until I actually started getting into music, meaning like playing musical instruments and playing with groups, that I then needed to change my mindset, because I always felt that I'm self-taught mainly.
Okay.
So I always felt like I'm the underdog in being a musician. Didn't know how to read music. I didn't know how to like, be able to use the lingo of communicating my musical thoughts to other people. For my family, my brothers and sisters, we can hear it all. We would tell, that bass part in the song, we would hear it. We'd mention it to friends or whoever, and they'd be like, what part are you talking about? I don't even hear that part. Or it'd be finally somebody would bring it out, and then another friend would be like, now I always hear that one part of that song that you bring out, you brought up, because I've never heard it before. So between us, we were like musically communicating to each other, my siblings. But it wasn't until later on that I started, was like, I had like a mental blockage thinking like, well, I don't think I'm good enough.
I think a lot of musicians can relate to that.
So I had a really good friend, still a really good friend, JP Ballmont in San Diego, who's doing great educational stuff, plus touring and playing. In fact, he just got nominated for a Grammy in teaching, as a teacher in San Diego.
All right. And
so him and I are colleagues from San Diego State. And I remember at one time we were in a Latin jazz group, which I had to audition into. And I told him, because we had like a lunch break, and I told him he goes, well, why? And I go, well, because I don't know how to read music, and so I'm just kind of like, going. And so he goes, well, you mean to tell me that, Stevie Wonder's not a musician? And he's like, you mean to tell me Ray Charles is not a musician? Because
that part.
So it kind of resonated a little bit, and I started thinking about, okay, now I need to just figure out, let me just go ahead and enjoy my moment. I don't know what's going to happen. And at that time, early on in my career, 2003, I was like, okay, well, I'll just go ahead and enjoy it. And I've been enjoying it ever since.
Oh, that's awesome.
teaching myself how to read, now I write, now I compose, now, so I didn't stay that way.
You evolved.
Exactly. And that's always the journey of, at least for the musician, it's to evolve and apply ourselves and stuff.
It's just a joy to listen to musicians when they first started, and then if you have the blessing to hear them later, it's so awesome.
Yeah, and I think it was Miles Davis that said, it took a long time to sound like me.
Yeah.
It's like we first learn by listening to other musicians that we were passionate about, and we kind of like use a imán, like a magnet of certain things and frequencies that we enjoy. That's still kind of our interpretation of that, right? But we're at least trying to emulate as close as we can to that. But over time, we then say, okay, now we're our own voice, and then that's where we kind of develop.
That's it. So your music incorporates elements from various genres, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. What inspired you to blend different musical styles?
So I think I'm drawn to first of all music and the groove of things more so than, let's say, lyrics, right? So I'm aware of what makes me move. I'm attracted to bass lines. I'm attracted to like lower frequency sounds, drums and percussion, more so than like, let's say, violins and flutes, right? So in terms of how it moves me.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'll kind of think of, in Spanish we say tararear, which means it's like a way of like doodling, but with music in a way, like lyrically. So I could be anywhere, and just kind of like humming and coming up with different ideas. And so I would first try to copy it or record it onto something, and then transfer it onto musical charts or whatever. And so it would be in a basic idea, and then from there I would try to expand on the concept. And many times I don't even know if it's the introduction of a song. I don't know if it's just a section of a song, or if it just completely unravels into a whole new melody of a song, or inspires a lyric that I can add on to that. And so it's just mapping out that first inspiration. In terms of the genre blends, it can very easily get arranged and written in a way in which I'm using harmonies, that's jazz harmonies, or certain progressions that I enjoy from songs that I'm always passionate about. And then underneath that, in terms of rhythm, there's a whole exploration of the wonderful rhythms that can be used from Africa, from the Caribbean, from Mexico, from different time signatures, and even putting certain kind of rhythms that can somewhat clash together as well, but then relax the rhythms. And so then to kind of create a tension release type concept. It's basically like adding chile on chocolate.
Yeah.
Right. It's like two different concepts where you're like, they kind of go together, but then you do taste them, and then it's like this fireball in your mouth and it tastes great.
What challenges have you faced as a musician?
I think it's required to have challenges at all times, because, and the most challenging one is going to be the one I talked about, where you have your self blockage, very easily can turn into self-sabotage stuff, and I saw a lot of that during the pandemic with some friends, and and it was kind of like a downward spiral for a lot of people, but it was difficult to like really make sure what was the long game, So I think the mental blockage can be a challenge. The constant believing in that I could do it, even though everybody else doesn't believe that I could do it, right? So then it's going against the grain on as a challenge. So you have people saying no, 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 and I'm like yes, 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 right? So that's that as a challenge. And then there's there's also the physiological challenges on instruments, like if vocals, if you're sick or if you're having issues, or it's like making sure that we're constantly in tune and developing within the instrument, or so that there's fluidity and that there's the agility on it. It's like working out, if we're if the car's tuned up, and right, so it's kind of like a little bit of that as well. But I got some miles on me too, so I got a couple of squeaks here and there, but I think those would be the challenges, just balancing it out. I'm a family man, so I have priorities, and I want to make sure that I'm solid as best as I can in all the realms.
Can you talk about how you approach songwriting? Is there a particular process you follow, or
the first time that I really developed a song was, I had mentioned before, I had all these little kind of scattered ideas, right? Just little snippets of things. And I had that on an old computer when I was in college, that I carried with me everywhere. And in fact, I still have that old computer.
Oh.
And so I had a bunch of stuff in that computer. And a good friend of mine here, a drummer here in the Bay Area by the name of Brian Andres, has an Afro-Cuban jazz group. And he has a couple albums out, and he recorded, he was getting ready to prepare an upcoming album. And he had asked in a group, some of the members in the group, hey, has anybody got some original tunes? And so there had been, everybody, are wonderful musicians. Everybody had original tunes. And I remember asking Brian, I said, hey, what's in the mix there? What do we have? Do we have like up-tempo mambo stuff and blah, blah? And I didn't hear him say cha-cha-cha. So I said, which is a wonderful kind of mellowed, relaxed rhythm out of Cuba, made really famous during like the 50s and 60s. And so I asked him, I said, do you mind if I propose a cha-cha-cha song? He's like, yeah. So I went back to those ideas that I had. And then at that point, now I had the motivation to elaborate on one of those concepts. And then I had the inspiration, the motivation to finish the song. And so then it came out as a bluesy cha-cha-cha. And I ended up giving that to him. I said, hey, here's this tune. We could record it. And I mean, I didn't expect too much out of that, but
Sure.
He titled his album on for that song.
Oh, that's nice.
And then we ended up getting a 4 or 5-star review from Downbeat magazine, and they highlighted that song. And they, so I was like, oh, that's cool. I was like, all right. And then that turned into, well, if that works for his group, why not kind of go back and start writing some stuff for my group? And then that kind of then got the snowball effect of me kind of working and starting to, and I had a bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, one of the challenges was at one of the places that I was renting at, they had a power surge in the house, and then the whole power went out. And then when I went back, my computer didn't work. And then I finally got it to work, and I had all that stuff just deleted. And so all the stuff was lost.
Really? All those...
all the snippets of years from, back in the day.
Oh my gosh.
So at the time, my wife was like, what happened? I was like, what just happened? So then, Christmas came around. She ended up giving me this like computer. And from that point, I had all this updated software stuff, and I was like archaic with the dinosaur type of stuff. But this one got everything just so much more faster. So I started writing much more quicker. I was, my scratch track ideas were they almost sounded very well produced, and so I started learning more of like the technical, the tech side of stuff.
Do you have any ideas for backing that up somehow, or what would you tell?
So now, the clouds and Dropbox and, all kinds of stuff that I have to like make sure that I have all that stuff backed up and stuff. But, it's just, I mean, it all came natural for me. So it's just now going back and doodling again and, starting all over.
So, how do you tap into your feelings when creating a song?
Yeah. So, when they ask me, I write my stuff without any particular intention rather than just kind of like, okay, let me get this out and writing it out. I kind of like to think about it as like, a carne asada hang. If you have people coming over and you want to have some music background, like, or drive up the coast of California and pop in the album and just kind of enjoy the scenery, and having that as like the soundtrack to the cruise, right? So I think of my music that way. Like it's a little bit of everything in a way. In terms of specific tunes and specific ideas, they're usually, like, for example, the song that you had asked me about, Tranquilo que vas deprisa, right? That's a phrase that my dad would say to me before I would leave the house. And essentially it's a phrase, it's like he's just saying, be careful, right? But the translation of it is like, slow down that you're in a rush, right? So it's kind of like a conflicting idea, slow down that you're in a rush. But it's like, because you're in a rush, just take your time. Like vete tranquilo, right? So that phrase, I heard it all the time. And it wasn't until I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use that. And then also the tune needs to not be fast. It needs to be a little bit chill. And then I put in a chorus phrase in there and I translated it for inspiration of also Jose Alfredo, who wrote a lot of regional Mexican music. And I kind of give a tip of a hat to him because here's a tune that he knows, or that says, "No hay que llegar primero, hay que saber llegar." It's not to arrive. It's not about being the first to arrive. It's knowing how to arrive. Okay, and that's it's a snippet of a song that he had wrote. So it's kind of like, I'm putting these two concepts together, and then I'm creating a coro lyric on that, on top of a rhythm that I want to make sure it's kind of like moving along, but it's not fast, and so that's how I get that inspiration, and that's just that one particular tune. There's so many different inspirations and motivations that from kind of dark places too, and to uplifting places,
Who are some of your musical influences and how have they shaped your sound?
I really enjoy John Coltrane. Like on the jazz side, I enjoy Jerry Mulligan. And also I would say in terms of Latin and also trombone sound, I would say Poncho Sanchez, Francisco Torres, who's trombone player, and then the whole handful of música norteña music. And the reason why I love that stuff is because it's very simple lyric. The lyrics are very simple, it's very digestible, but there's a lot of feeling behind a particular word. And so I love that vibe from that rather than it having things to be super complicated or I just like that simplicity of that style of music and the way that I feel and I enjoy. I just always think of like my uncles and my grandparents and being in the backyard out where it's, you can see the stars or whatever, and having a little bonfire. And that's that feel is what I like to try to transmit.
Wow.
I'd say those ones. There's a whole list, there's
How about ones that would surprise us? Like earlier you said you enjoyed Elvis so much.
Yeah, growing up. Yeah, Elvis was, even for like Christmas parties, I would mimic his dance movements and they would like give me a little guitar and I'd pretend I was, you ain't nothing but a hound, to do the whole thing. And I think for my parents and probably my siblings, they probably were just laughing at me or whatever, enjoying it.
Yeah, but it was entertaining. It was wonderful.
But for me, I was like in the moment,
Yeah.
James Brown definitely was a big influence in our home. So we would get down with all that.
Can you share a time when a fan shared how your music impacted them?
Yeah. Let me see here. So there's been times where people have come up, when we're performing and playing. They acknowledge how they feel, and then and it makes me feel good.
Of course.
I think where I get the surprise from is when I get messages from people in Japan, and I start getting messages from people from like Colombia or from Peru, and from other in Germany and other kinds of European countries, and they'll send me messages, and they'll tell me like how they enjoy the music, and they'll ask me for physical copies. And they're like, when's your next album coming out? We want it. We want an actual vinyl of it, a copy. How do we get it? Like, we want it. And they'll tell me that, well, we want to, I'll pay it in advance, whatever. Like, so to me, those are like unique ways of, wow, it's interesting that this music is actually
so heartwarming.
It's broader than what was real. To me, it was just expressing it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how far it can get,
Absolutely. What role does collaboration play in your music? Are there certain artists you seek to work with? I mean,
sure. I think the collaboration's a must as well, and in many different facets. So I collaborate with arrangers. So we kind of put together an idea of a template. I'll write out a lot of the melody lines and the rhythmic changes, the formatting of it, and the overall structure, the progression, etc. And then I'll work with an arranger who will work specifically on the horn lines, so they'll harmonize it, and that'll be specific to the instrumentation that I'm looking for in my group. But sometimes I'll record a tune that it's not intended to be performed live.
Okay.
And at that point, I'll have strings and violins and guitars, and it kind of be a little bit more. It's all live music with musicians. But those are collaborations that I'll work with. Right. I've done a couple of collaborations with writing. And so we would kind of get together and talk about how we can collaborate on writing. Usually I'll have pretty much the concept and everything, what I'm working on. And then I'll propose it to somebody and then say, hey, this is where I'm either stuck on, or this is where, can we come up with a B part to this tune? Things like that. And then I get a lot of inquiries for my collaboration on stuff. So I have some artists that will reach out to me, and we'll do some collaborations. And I mean, I've been lucky to have that stuff like be on a 2-month promotion for like a McDonald's commercial in California and Texas, and then I had some of my music in sync licensings for an episode on Showtime. So, these are kinds of like, wow, being able to
That's
collaborate
amazing.
and work with people, also helps to open up other doors. So I think it's important to be able to collaborate in those ways.
So you said earlier you were just expressing something when you were creating a song. So you don't, are you thinking about how listeners will be impacted? Or do you have a hope regarding listeners' reactions or response to what you do, or do you not really think about that?
I don't really. Yeah, I'm not thinking on the receiving end of it. I think what I want to try to tap into is as authentic and honest as I can be with myself. But I'm aware that not everything's going to be liked, and not everything's going to be enjoyed. But that's
That's part of
that's
it.
the reality of of everything, so but if whatever it is that I do put out there, in terms of, at least for me, I'm feeling I'm doing as best of the quality sonically and musicianship wise and authenticity with myself, that's where I am at that moment in time.
So what kind of legacy do you want to leave as an artist?
I hadn't even thought about legacy stuff. I think the only thing that I do think, as I mentioned, as a family man, are stuff that, at least in the years and the generations to come, that maybe my great grandkid or whatever, or son, or whoever, can play, like, oh yeah, let me reference this song that my grandfather, whoever, would have, and they can listen to that. So I think for that. But in terms of the musical, like, stamp on the world, I have no idea what.
Legacy for you is like for
For
in
me,
your
it would be more
family, your
intimacy. Yeah,
generations.
it's more intimacy. To
Yeah.
me, it would be more of like when the impact of when my grandfather, like, would read out our family tree. It would be similar to, like, let's listen to some of the music, that had been once I'm gone.
Yeah, what a blessing for your descendants. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that at that and I have tucked away a bunch of stuff that are just in boxes that my wife can hand over to the kids or whatever when things are when they need to be handed over.
Yeah. Can you describe a memorable performance experience that was particularly special for you?
I think one of the funnest ones that I had was when I was in France, and it was in the middle of a bull ring, and they had built a stage in the center of the bull ring.
Okay.
And then and the whole experience to even get to there to that part of South France in Toulouse was a long journey to get there just to begin with. So and then finally we got there, and it was this giant festival. It was, I don't know how many, maybe 20,000 people or so. It was just a wonderful experience. And then when we're on stage and just seeing in the middle of a bull ring, like, and the lights were dim, and so the flashlights are on, and the cell phone lights are on and stuff. And so it was like, wow, this is cool. This is really cool. Weather's perfect. There was just a moment where I thought, like, this was an experience that I was like, wow, I love. This is great experience.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that one.
Mm-hmm. And it's a unique place. Sounds like the place alone was pretty.
Yeah, there's a festival called Tempo Latino, and they bring in acts from all around, and it's really focused on the Latin side. So they have like the pillars and leaders of groups in those genres performing there, and they have a bunch of. They had a group also I forget their name, but it's a Japanese group that plays Latin music.
Really?
And it's not Orquesta de la Luz. It's like they do a mix of like cumbia and kind of, and so it was. But they sing in their language, using a lot of these rhythms, and their instruments as well. So it's a blend of it's a blend of like traditional instruments, but played in different rhythms outside of their country. But then they're also singing in their language. So, and then the way that they're dressed is also similar to like how they are in their tradition. But it was really, it was the performance was right before ours, or the day before ours. And so we had like an off night, and we were just kind of like, wow, this is such a cool experience, So, but anyways, I think that kind of stuff is cool.
What role do you think social media plays in your career?
I think it's very important because back in the days you had labels and you had all that stuff that helped to push and promote, and now it's like direct to consumer, right? Direct to the fans, direct to people, and so it's a powerful tool to be able to quickly and almost without much monetary investment, you can put the word out quickly. Whereas before, if you wanted, like in the past for me, I would like design a flyer, print it, print out copies, and then I'd have to distribute them.
Yeah, that's
right.
a lot of
And
work.
that takes time, that takes money, driving to places and, handing out flyers. And so there was much more legwork and much more time and much more money involved with that. And now I could do a design and then post it. Right.
Yeah.
And then it could reach a larger group and it could be easily shared. So the accessibility to get to larger groups and also new groups would be through social media, So I think that is important to explore.
Can you tell us about your latest project and what you hope it conveys?
Yeah, so I have 3 albums out in actual tangible like vinyl copies, and then I released a couple of singles, and I'm currently working on a new album and project. And but before I do that, I'm gonna release probably a single, and so that tune is going to be one I'm going to start to promote and push, but it's not out yet, and I still haven't recorded it yet. But that'll be a tune. I'll tell the title. It's called Ecos del Corazón.
Echoes of the Heart.
Yeah, Echoes of the Heart. So that'll be a tune that I'll be working on, hopefully be coming out this year.
I want to hear that. I can't wait. If you could collaborate with any artist, dead or alive, who would it be and why? Well,
I think I'm close to it, actually.
Really?
I am, yeah. So I had mentioned Poncho Sanchez. So we have we've been communicating. We have a relationship that where he'll sometimes come into town, and sometimes I'll even backline some of his conga drums for him, and then or pick him up or whatever. So there we have some common friends as well. So over the years, I felt like we've been buddies in a way. We'll have dinner, we'll have breakfast together. But then it got to the point where I was like, okay, I want to see if if you'd be interested in wanting to play on a tune. But I still kind of didn't build up the nerve to it. And I remember over a phone call, one time he called me and he goes, "Hey, I just wanted to give you a thanks on the drums, and so, oh yeah, no problem." And so, and then we started doing some small talk stuff, and we talked about the Belly Up in San Diego, which he had just recently recorded live and had his performance come there out, the album there. And so we were talking about that, and he goes, "You should play with your band there." And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." I go, "We could probably do it." I was like, "But to be able to sell it out," I said, I said we'd probably have to do it with like feature another artist with us so that we can, And so I'm kind of like dropping a little hints there, and he didn't mention anything. And I said, but I was like, we'd have to do something like that, and we could probably, I had some friends that we can probably contact in Tijuana, and I know some people in San Diego. We could probably, and we're still talking, and then a few minutes went by, and then he goes, yeah, he goes, yeah, I don't mind playing. I could play with your band. Oh. And I said, and then and he says, but if I play with your band, he goes, the audience will sometimes want me to play like 1 or 2 more songs. And I was like, well, now that you mentioned that, I said, I actually have an idea that would work. I said, because one, I was like, I wanted to see if you'd be interested in recording a tune with me, and we can promote that tune. And then from there, I have this other idea to be able to feature as a show with Poncho as a collaboration. He goes, yeah, I like that. He goes, why don't you talk to his musical director, Francisco Torres? And he goes, who's also helped with some of the arrangements on my song. He's also performed with my group. So it's a little bit more realistic than just like, wow.
This is so exciting. I'm so excited for you.
So that's where we're at. And
it's in the air.
It's there,
forming.
Exactly. Now it's just, hopefully the stars align and all that stuff. But, that's kind of like how that collaboration and the work and and just years of just, it wasn't me like trying to hit him, hey, can you
Right.
record? No. It was more of like, hey, let's just be buddies and friends. And we have common interests and also, some friends in common. And over the years of, really, him seeing how I am with him and his group, and it became like, okay, it's not just because everyone wants to pull at a legend, or somebody always wants to
Absolutely.
pull like, hey, give me what you have, give me shit, give me. But sometimes it's like, no, in life we gotta give,
That's true.
So that's kind of like how, by giving, then guess what? Now it comes back too. So anyways, that's
Oh, that's a great story. I love that. So looking to the future, what are your aspirations as you continue your musical journey beyond this amazing collaboration that's probably going to form?
I think at some point I'm probably want to get into like actual bigger production stuff. So yeah, my music, but I also want to start looking at
Like behind a ballet or behind a
no, like
theater?
no. Okay, so what I mean is like putting like small festivals together.
Oh.
So starting off a day where it'll be a lineup of groups and bands,
Mm-hmm.
like a festival, pretty much, and then hopefully it can turn into a 2-day thing, and then something like that.
And then an annual thing.
And it'd be an annual, yeah, it would be
Okay.
annual, and
See.
then and just kind of see how that works. So
Okay.
in terms of that kind of production stuff, and I've gotten involved, helped to be a part of some of the first Latin festivals in Walnut Creek, downtown, and with the Leisure Center collaboration there. And they called me back to do to perform with my group, and then they asked me to. I was on a steering committee, and they were asking me, some ideas for the event, and then they asked me to MC it.
Oh, great.
And so I was like, wow, all these parts that I had never thought about wanting to do. And then I got the opportunity to be in roles that I hadn't really put myself into.
Mm-hmm.
And so that worked out. And so little by little, I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like I want to try to get more involved in putting some of these, events together and stuff. But education is big for me too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always interested in constantly helping and figuring out, and getting schools that I know also to participate, and teaching at schools and stuff like that. And so I had the local high school band come out with their big band mambo group, and they performed, so all their community and their families, and were watching them perform and stuff. So things like that I think is cool.
So what can you speak about? Can you speak to the business side? Because we all think about the glamour and the stage, and, I get to do my thing and show my art, but there's a business to it. And so how do you conduct yourself, or how do you get that information just starting out?
In my case, I don't know how it is for a lot of other people. In my case, I don't come from any kind of like hookups, right? I wasn't born into like a connected musical family or scene, and easily, get in through certain doors, Everything I've done has been just grassroots learning on my own. But I had to learn many ways, like, okay, if I put on an event, distributing the flyers and figuring out all kinds of stuff, right? So one time this was me in Tijuana, and there was a professor in Tijuana that was taking his students in business to meet different professionals in their environment, and then asking them, what do you think helped you get to where you're at now, right? And I thought it was ironic because I was like, I'm just like this musician playing in Tijuana. Why would they even want to come and ask me, right? I'm not. And one of the things that I took away from that was that they said, it's when you're passionate about it, when you're passionate about something, the money will come to you, as opposed to always seeking out, the dollar. And that kind of resonated for me at that moment when I said, okay, I'm not out there chasing a dollar, but I need to make sure that I'm passionate and I'm focused on what I'm doing, right? Now, that also will attract and draw certain things. So if my motivation is music, then I'm going to start drawing on certain people that are interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If I'm interested in only the money side of things, okay, and if I'm focused on that, then I think it's going to be difficult because I'm not that business side. I've learned things, but I'm not on that business side of things, right? So, so what I'm trying to get at is that when I'm doing something, in other words, the collaborations with like the Leisure Center, those are things that I did not seek out. Those are people that had reached out to me and asked me, hey, would you want to be a part of this committee? Now, how and why did they do that stuff? Probably because I was focused on doing what I was doing in my own world.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was doing it well enough, then it's going to draw the attention of people that want to collaborate, right?
Yes.
But if I'm over there knocking on the door saying, hey, I want some money, I want you to hire me, I want this and this and that, it's going to be much more difficult
Mm-hmm.
for me to be able to make that transition. And it's just me. I don't have a booking agent. I don't have management. I don't have, a whole team. So, but I play all the roles, and at some point it's like, I'm going to have to pass and collaborate as well. But, composing the music, performing the music, leading the band on with the music, doing the contracts, doing the promotional stuff, like all the stuff that goes into that, I do it all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if I'm able to do it well enough to get the attention of people that do have money and that have the interest for that, then I'll be able to work that business side of it a little bit easier.
Well, Javier, your insights have been invaluable, and I think I'd like to share one of your songs with the audience. So could you just do a little intro to your song?
Is this the one we're talking about, the
Yeah.
Tranquilo? Oh, yeah. So this is a tune that was recorded on our third album called Hella Sonic. And this tune is drawn on the inspiration of what my dad would say to me before I would leave the house. And I use that as the motivation to come up with some of the lyrics. And then the rhythm itself in this tune is a little bit more relaxed. And it seems to be one of the popular songs that we get some plays on. And so yeah, this one's called Tranquilo que vas deprisa.